myself, put me on the big screen. Welcome to our virtual building tour. Thank you for joining. My name is Rianne Janovich. I am 21 Acres Administrative Assistant, and we're just so glad you could be with us today. This is our first tour of the new year, so it's just exciting to be back to our routines and schedules, and looking forward to a whole year of really great education. Today we are here with Barry Thebos, our green energy educator, and Kelly Rankich, our facilities manager and lead green associate, who will be filming Barry today. We'll get started with the tour in just a moment, but I wanted to start out by saying a couple things along with introducing ourselves. So first, I'd like to let everyone know that we very much encourage discussion on these live tours, and we love hearing from you, engaging, or typing to us in the chat if you don't want to use the mic, but please feel free to share sentiments and ask questions as they come up through the tour. We will be recording this, as you might have already noticed, and it will hopefully get this uploaded to YouTube. So if you feel uncomfortable with your screen being on, that's totally understandable. But do feel free to interject and ask questions, because it's a really small group, and it's just nice to tailor it to what people are really curious about. And thanks again for filling out those questions through Eventbrite, which help us kind of guide our brain and see what you're all interested in. So again, you can unmute yourself if you want to engage. And as you'll soon see, we have a ton of fascinating sustainable features on campus and in the building that kind of deserve a follow-up. So I'm going to be sending everyone a follow-up email full of resources and deeper dives into some favorite features that we might cover today and other events that 21 Acres has going on. And for folks who've never heard of our organization before, welcome again. I'll give you a little bit of information about 21 Acres. So 21 Acres is a living laboratory which serves to educate our communities around climate change and how to participate in climate action by building and promoting resilient food systems that are rooted in agroecology, regenerative farming, sustainable land stewardship, and by adopting sustainable living and building practices, which you will see in a moment. 21 Acres is located in Woodinville, Washington. We are on the ancestral lands of indigenous nations, including the Stillaguamish tribe, the Duwamish, and Coast Salish peoples. We acknowledge these nations as the original stewards of this land, and we honor both the land itself and the Coast Salish people, past and present. And we're greatly honored to steward this land for future generations. So thank you for learning with us and how we're trying to preserve this space. All right, without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Barry, our tour guide and green energy educator, to introduce himself a little bit more. And I will be in the chat box and answering questions and whatnot. Thank you so much.
Well, hi everybody, and thanks for being here. So Rianne gave kind of a broad overview of our mission here at 21 Acres, but I just wanted to touch on kind of the ways that we work on the things that she discussed. So we're a nonprofit organization focused on promoting agroecology or sustainable agriculture, the term that maybe more folks have heard, regenerative practices also. So things that help build healthy soil and supporting local food systems in general. And the focus today is going to be more on the sustainable living side and the LEED Platinum building that we have here on campus. And we kind of promote green building and sustainable living practices, as well as agroecology as climate solutions. So it's all kind of like focused on climate and ways that these practices can help to solve the climate crisis that we're facing. And just to give a little context around buildings, globally, buildings and the building industry account for about 40% of climate emissions for the entire globe. So anything we can do to reduce the building construction process, as well as building operations, which is one of the biggest parts of building energy use, is through the operation of any building, is going to go a long way towards mitigating or reducing climate change impacts, and eventually working towards a world where we don't have to worry about climate change as much. And then on the agriculture side, anything you can do to support local producers who are doing sustainable practices or soil healthy practices that are building more organic matter in the soil is going to help essentially pull carbon out of the atmosphere through those plants and put it into the soil. So that's kind of what we're doing on that side of the mission. And so we have a market here where we sell produce from around 75 or more local producers who are either farmers themselves providing produce in the market, or they're using local ingredients to produce value-added products, which we sell here in the market. And then we also have, as the name suggests, 21 acres of land. The front 3 is kind of dedicated to the building and the grounds here, and then the back 18 is agriculture space, as well as wetland restoration and wildlife spaces that kind of support the agricultural ecosystem out there on the farm. And so that's kind of a broad summary of what we do. We also have an education kitchen where we do cooking classes, and there's a lot of education that happens throughout the campus. So with that overview, I just wanted to try and get a little conversation going, make sure people feel comfortable speaking up. Just maybe ask if you all are comfortable just saying where you're coming from today.
Yeah, since Joanna, you're the first on my screen, would you mind sharing with us where you're coming from?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Joanna Larson. I'm my apartment in Bremerton, Washington this morning, and I work as a Climate Corps Fellow for the North Kitsap School District up in Paulsville.
Welcome.
Thank you. And Anna is next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Anna, and I'm calling in from Mexico. I volunteer to teach English conversation classes here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Welcome.
Thanks.
And last, we've got Robin,
who lives about 5 miles away from 21 Acres. I'm a member and a frequent shopper in the market and really embrace your mission. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, great to have you here, Robin.
Nice to virtually meet you all.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to follow up with that just by asking, I'm just going to kind of give some basic categories that we cover and see if there's one that really jumps out to you. So energy and water are things that we often talk about out on the terrace, and then lighting and automated systems, including like HVAC controls in the mechanical room would be another category. So automated controls and lighting, as well as daylighting. And then food related things we'll talk about in the kitchen. So some of the sort of ways that the kitchen connects the building to the farm. So I'll try and summarize that more briefly. So water, energy, food, and lighting and automation. And I like to sort of tailor the tour to the audience we've got. So if there's, maybe everyone could just say if they have a top 1 on the list or top 2, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
I'm interested in all of the above. So anything I learned today is great.
Same for me. Same for me. Although water and food both sound interesting. So Robin, how about you?
I'm interested in everything as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Round us out.
All right. Well, we'll do a well-rounded tour for you then. Maybe a little extra on water and food. Cool. Well, thanks for answering that and engaging. The other thing I like to point out as kind of related to our mission and related to climate solutions is that climate solutions are also social justice solutions in a sense. So if you look at climate change through the lens of environmental justice, thinking about the fact that communities of color and under-resourced communities tend to be the hardest hit by climate impacts, but generally have some of the least responsibility for creating those impacts. So not only is climate change kind of a big environmental issue, it's also a social justice issue. So we try and kind of hold that in our hearts and minds as we're doing this work. And yeah, just want to make
Thank
note
you for
of that.
sharing that, Bear.
Of course. Important thing to consider in all the work that we do. And so I'll start by kind of going over a little bit about LEED certification. We're standing right here in front of our LEED Platinum plaque. So our building is LEED Platinum certified, and LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, and it's a program of the U.S. Green Building Council. It's their green building certification program. There's a lot of different green building certifications, but LEED is one of the most kind of well-known, widely used, and Platinum is the highest certification you can get. And the way the certifications work is that you get a certain number of points for different features or practices that you employ that are sustainable or reduce impact in the construction of your building. And it's pretty flexible certification, which I think is one of the benefits and why it's able to kind of have higher participation and bring more people in. You can get points for things that are kind of more obvious and visible, like having solar panels on your roof, or having a green roof, or things along those lines. But you can also get points for having access to public transit. So if it's easier for people to get to your building in a sustainable way, that reduces the impact of your building. Having bike racks, things as simple as that. And then, of course, the materials that go into your building, if you're using recycled materials, or the materials come from a smaller geographic radius, that can also get you points. If you're mitigating like a polluted site as part of your construction project, restoring a wetland, there's a whole long list of things that you can get points for. So I think it covers a lot of ground, and that's one of the strengths of LEED. And they're also now offering an operation and maintenance certification, which we're looking into getting, which tracks more the building performance over time. And that becomes a lot more important, especially these days when so much of the work we do in the world is kind of data driven and looking at how things are functioning over the long haul. So that's a little summary of LEED. And since we're talking a little bit about building performance, why don't we walk over here and look at how our building is performing. We have an energy monitoring system installed on our building called eGauge. And this is the display that we get from it. So this top line, if you can see where my mouse is, might be kind of small. This top red line is our overall building energy use. And then this green line down here is our solar production from our solar array on the roof. And then there's these little checkered lines, which are subloads or different things that are using electrical energy in the building that we can track. So the one that we have up on the screen right now is our one of our largest energy users. This is our space heating, which is a ground source heat pump. So if I click off of this, it disappears, and it comes back. And you can kind of see how these big spikes in energy use correlate with the heat pump turning on. And then there's kind of this base layer of energy use outside of the spikes.
Can everyone see that little detail? It's a little choppy right now on the screen, but it's there.
Okay. Well, I can, if I show a more zoomed in view, we're looking at a whole week right now. So every one of these little bumps in the green represents a day of solar production. it's the winter right now, and it's been pretty cloudy. The last couple of days we've had sun, but you can tell there's not as much solar production as we get in the summer. But if you look at, let's look at one day, you might be able to see a little more clearly some of these lines. So yeah. This is that heat pump that I was talking about. And it's actually just recently turned off. And then there's a smaller heat pump that does our water heating. And that's this other line right here. And there's other things we can look at. The elevator probably hasn't been used a whole lot today. That's this very small thing at the bottom. Dishwasher has not been used today. Through a lot of the things. Oh, go ahead.
I was curious, how many different applications and electricity outlets and heat pumps, how many things can we add to that list and customize? Is it kind of infinite for the building?
Well, it depends on hardware. So we have 2 E-Gauge units, which each have 30 plugs in them. And because we have a 3-phase power system, we need 3 current sensors to monitor most things. So that limits us to about 10 different things per E-Gauge unit. So we can monitor about 20 different systems. I misspoke. We actually have 3, but one of them is a smaller unit that only has 12 plugs. So we can monitor about, like 22 different things. Awesome. 23 right now. If we got more E-Gauge systems, we could monitor more things. And then there's other ways. So I bring this up to show you what our building's doing and kind of what we're using. But there's also things that you could use in your own home. And some of the more affordable, simple things are like smart plugs that you can use with like a smart speaker. Like when you tell Alexa, turn down the lights, the little plug that gets used for that can also do energy monitoring. And they at least, I don't know if all of them do it, but there are a number where you can actually get an app for your phone and you can look at the energy use being used at different plugs throughout your house. So if you wanted to see like how much your refrigerator is using, or I think most things that are under 15 amps, which is a standard wall plug, you can monitor. And you can get the smart plugs for, a few bucks on the internet these days. So it's a really affordable, accessible way to do energy monitoring for most people, and it can be kind of fun. And then there's things called kilowatt meters, which is just a wall plug with a little display, and it'll tell you over time how much an appliance is using. And then if you're having electrical work done in your home and you wanted to see the overall energy usage or monitor things that don't have plugs, you could ask the electrician to install an energy monitoring system that's similar to the E-Gauge, which is what we have, which is connected with current sensors inside our electrical panel. And these systems are really important just to be able to understand, first of all, how much you're using and where you're using it. And that allows you to, look at percentages and then target any measures, energy efficiency measures you might want to take and have the biggest impact that way. So first, knowing is half the battle, as they say. So knowing where you're using energy. So that's E-Gauge and a little bit about energy monitoring. Any questions about that while we're on the topic? Okay. I gave you guys a little bit of a hint earlier, but can anyone guess what the largest energy user over the course of a year is in our building? Give you a few seconds.
Anna, it looks like you unmuted. Did you want to answer?
Well, I'm going to guess heating.
You got it.
Okay.
I gave you that hit. Yep. It's heating accounts for about 50% of our energy use in the wintertime. And over the course of the year, I think it's probably more like 25%, but it's very substantial. Even though we have a highly efficient heating system, it's still one of the biggest energy users. So yeah, good guess on that. And maybe with that, we'll head outside and take a little closer look at some things out here.
This is one of my favorite parts, is seeing how we relate to the environment. And you can kind of see our terrace here. You can overlook on the valley, and it's a really idyllic view.
Yeah, the tree line back there, kind of, there's a wildlife kind of habitat buffer zone between the farm and the front 3 acres. That's the tree line you're seeing. So back behind there is our farm. And if you're interested, next Saturday, there's the farm tour. So you get to be able to see what's going on out there a little more. Every 4th Saturday, we do farm tours, and 3rd Saturdays is where we are right now on the building tour. So here we are out on the terrace. And this is a good spot to talk about, yeah, like Rianne was saying, how our building kind of relates with the environment. And one way that I like to think about this is essentially like the less you can fight natural systems, but instead work with natural systems, the lower your impact is going to be. So one of the best examples of this, I think, and simplest is passive solar design. So I wanted to just touch on that a little bit. So here we're looking at, this is the south-facing side of the building. And you can see we've got a few windows here. And if you want to use passive solar for heating, it's really important to have windows on the south side of your building. And to have a well-insulated wall, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But essentially, the way that passive solar works is that you want to get as much solar energy into the windows as you can in the wintertime when you need that heating, and you want as little going in when you don't want it in the summertime. And the way that you manage that is the roof overhang. So you can see right now there's kind of a dull shadow line that's above the top of the windows. And we're getting close to midday now, which is, you know, when the peak solar energy is coming in, although it's cloudy today. So we're getting as much of that solar energy in through the windows in the wintertime as we can when the sun's a little bit lower in the sky. So the shadow stays up high. In the summertime, the sun is much higher in the sky. And so the shadow from this overhang actually casts all the way to the bottom of the wall around midday when it's peak sun and the hottest time of the day, or close to the hottest time of the day, so that we're keeping all that solar radiation out of the windows when we don't want it. And then we also have our floors are cast concrete, so they can actually hold a lot of that heat when the sun hits them and store it in the ground or in the floor inside the building. So that's kind of a simple way that buildings have been oriented southward facing and designed for millennia, really. Even like the Greeks and the Romans were doing passive solar design to some degree, and many other cultures, I'm sure. And then this, the structure that's on the overhang, this arbor here, is designed to hold leafy vine, which can leaf out in the summertime and enhance that effect even more. So if you can use plants to even enhance that effect more, that's great. So passive solar. And the way that we keep the heat in the walls, once we've got it in there, is by having good insulation. And these walls are made out of a pretty cool material called insulated concrete forms. Here's a little sample of that. It's kind of like a giant Lego block. You can see these little nubs where you can fit blocks together. If you look at this little demo picture, you can see someone building a wall out of these insulated concrete forms. So it's got 2 inches of recycled styrofoam insulation on the inside and the outside of the building, which allows the heat to stay where we want it, which is inside in the wintertime, outside in the summertime. And then you would put rebar in these plastic grooves here and pour the concrete in the middle. And then that way the form itself actually becomes a part of the wall, so you don't have to dismantle the form after you've cast it. And these also help reduce the amount of cement that you have to use, in addition to another product called Apex Block, which is kind of similar, but the styrofoam is actually mixed in with the cement in the wall. But due to those 2 products, we were able to reduce the overall cement that was needed for this building by about 575 cubic yards. So that's reduces the impact and what's called the embodied energy of the building pretty dramatically. Cement uses a lot of energy in its production, so the more you can reduce that, the better. On the plus side, you can use aggregate or like gravel and sand that comes from somewhere local. So we also did that. And then also this styrofoam is about the blocks that were used in construction of this building are about 50% recycled. So this building kept about 17,000 pounds of styrofoam out of the landfill just by the recycled content in these blocks. So it's a little on our insulation for the building.
Barry, what is the name of that company again?
The supplier for these?
Yes.
So we got them from Valley Supply Company here in Woodinville. They sell them.
Local too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, the use of local materials definitely helps with the just the embodied energy use, as you said. You don't have to ship it all the way over here.
Exactly. And so at this point, I often talk about the solar array on our roof, but you probably won't be able to get a great view of it. We could take a quick glance from down here, but I'm going to show you a 3D view in a minute, so we can take a closer look at our solar array and our living roof. But while we're out here, I think it's a good opportunity to talk about rainwater. Because if you look at the surface that I'm standing on right now, you'll notice it's not like a solid concrete slab, but it's pavers, and what are called permeable pavers, because the rainwater can make its way in between all the cracks between them. So the less you can use, a solid slab or impermeable surfaces, the better it is for rainwater and natural water systems in general. This way the rainwater kind of makes its way percolating through the soil down into the water table gradually, instead of like in a big parking lot, you get all of this huge influx of water, which we've been experiencing a lot of lately here in Washington. And, leads to flooding, runoff, erosion, and, all kinds of problems. So the less impermeable surfaces you can have, the better. So every surface on our property that can be permeable is. So our whole parking lot is actually paved with permeable pavers. You might be able to get a closer look at that later on in the tour. And then this patio area that I'm standing on, and another one that's down by our market, are all with permeable pavers. The only things that are paved with concrete are things that are actually part of the roof structure of the building, and then our sidewalk, just so that it's a little more safe and durable for accessibility purposes. And then you probably can't hear it virtually, but there's a low hum happening here, and I'm getting the signal that there may be a question arising. So
yes, I was just gonna answer in the chat. Anna asks if the pavers are made locally, and I know that we used a local company to install them, but I'm not sure if they were sourced locally.
that is a good question, and I'm not 100% sure myself. I know that when we needed to get replacement pavers, they were not far away. So we get them from a local supplier, but I'm not sure if they're manufactured locally or not.
It's a great question.
But I can look into that if you'd like follow up. And if you're looking for pavers for a project nearby, definitely reach out. We can get you the information on where we got ours.
Yeah, and even with some other features, you'll see there's some local companies we can recommend if anyone's thinking about remodeling their driveway, their countertops. You'll see they're really cool. Yeah, let us know. Reach out. We can always recommend some green building solutions.
Yeah, and that reminds me, I neglected to give my background at the beginning of the tour. But I have a master's degree in sustainable technology, which is kind of a hybrid of renewable energy systems and building science. But I've done a lot of work on renewable energy systems design and things like that. So if you have questions about solar for your home or other energy efficiency related things for buildings, feel free to shoot, even if I didn't bring it up on the tour. I'll try and make time for that. So just throw it into the chat or whatever.
And I'm sorry to interject, we are at 11:33, so 27 minutes left.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, so I was just about to bring up our on-site wastewater treatment system, which don't have the greatest view of here, but it's in the hillside. And the idea is that it, can you see it on your camera?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so you see all these little green circles on the hillside. Those are all the caps of our tanks that do part of the wastewater treatment process. It's all natural, done by bacteria that occur naturally in the water. And then you may hear a little bit of a low hum, which is coming from these blowers, which are underneath these metal caps here at the top on these little concrete tanks. And those are called nibblers for some reason. I don't know that reason, but actually I probably do know that reason, which is that there's bacteria that live in this oxygen-rich environment that they create, and they eat all of the pathogens and nutrients that are still in the water in the final stage of cleaning before it goes out to our Glendon biofilters on the farm. So yeah, the bacteria are kind of eating all of the things that we don't want to go into the water table. And the first stage is a anaerobic process, so there's no oxygen mixing with the water. The stuff is just kind of sitting in a tank, and bacteria that thrive in that kind of environment are doing an initial stage of cleaning, which is, I think, one of the bigger stages of the cleaning. And then this is the final aerobic stage where oxygen gets pumped into the water. And then the reason we have it situated on the hill here is so that gravity can help push it out to our Glendon biofilters on the farm, which are like a big sandbox made of concrete, and the water percolates up through the sand and makes its way back into the water table through the top. And there's more bacteria in there that kind of do a very final stage of cleaning. But we have our water tested before it gets out to the biofilters on an annual basis. And it's some of the cleanest water that the company that does the testing sees. So that's a bit.
This is wastewater from like our dishwashing and stuff like that.
Yeah. So all of this water comes from dishwashing, the sinks, the shower, and then also the effluent from our composting toilets. So we have composting toilets, which I was about to mention. But yeah, essentially all the liquids that come off of the composting toilets also get processed through the system. So everything on site. We don't have any city sewer connection. And our building uses about 80% less water than a conventional commercial building of this size. And I'm going to throw another question out to you, which is, can anyone guess amongst, I'll give you three options, low flow fixtures, composting toilet, and behavioral practices. What is the biggest way that we reduce water in our building? Water usage.
Well, I know that toilets are water suckers, so I'm guessing that piece of it.
Composting toilets.
Yeah.
And then we've
you
got...
are right. Right again.
Nice.
Yeah, composting toilets are huge. A standard toilet, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get down there, but uses about 3 gallons of water per flush, or an old toilet uses about 3 gallons per flush. The newer ones can use as low as 1 gallon, but between 1 and 3 gallons. And a composting toilet can use 0 water per no flush, but on our toilets, we do have a foam flushing agent that uses about 3 ounces of water, which just helps keep things a little bit cleaner in the long run and a little lower maintenance for us. But it's, biodegradable foam flushing agent. So it's about a 95 to 98% reduction in water per flush. So that's one of the biggest benefits of composting toilets. And one thing you don't think about as often when you're talking about water is the energy that's associated with water. So if you have a city water connection, all of the water that's coming into your building has to be treated as drinking water and go through pumps and filters and all kinds of things before it gets to you. And then on the wastewater end, if you have a sewer connection, has to be treated in a wastewater treatment plant and go through pumps and a lot of other processes on that end. So for every gallon of water, I did a calculation on average in the United States, about 3 to 4 watt hours of energy are used. So you can start doing calculations out from that, but it's something that you don't always think about, the energy and water connection. Are there any other questions about water, any things we've gone over since we've been out here?
We do have Miriam, who's joined us in the chat. They're asking, let me get back up there. What material covers the styrofoam that contains the cement? It's a great question because I do not know.
Yeah, that's a good question. So on the inside of the building, we've got stucco. So there's the styrofoam and then there's a stucco layer. And usually there's like some metal mesh that the stucco, which is essentially a cement mix, gets put over, but you can kind of see that textured surface. And then on the inside of the building, it's plaster or drywall, depending on which wall we're looking at. But the exterior walls are generally plaster. Good question. Any others while we're here? Okay. Well, keep the questions percolating. Feel free to ask while we're walking back into the building here. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to show you the roof.
Oh yeah, let me remove the spotlight and replace the spotlight.
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't need to. You just share the screen, sorry.
Yes, I'm going to right now. Okay. All right. So here we are virtually on our roof, and you can get a better view of what's going on from here. So you can see our solar array there, and it's a 26 kilowatt solar array. There's half of it over here, and then you turn over to this side, there's the other half of it on 2 different pitches of roof. And our roof angle is specifically designed to be at the optimal tilt angle for our latitude, which is around 46 degrees, 47 degrees. And yeah, it produces about 27,000 kilowatt hours per year, which is the average American home uses about 10,000 kilowatt hours per year, so it's a little less than 3 average American homes that it powers. But for us, since we have a commercial market and we have a kitchen and heating and a number of other things, we're a decent sized commercial building. It covers about 15 to, I think this year was 18% of our annual energy use was covered by the solar, getting close to 20%. So definitely makes a big impact. And then in the summertime, on a sunny day, generally we're sending more energy back to the electrical grid than we're using here on site. So when we looked at E-Gauge, I forgot to mention this, but any of that green shaded area, we're here right now. So, well, yeah, you probably won't be able to see it since I'm screen sharing, but there's a green shaded area that's the energy that we're sending back to the grid. And then just below our solar array here is our living roof. And this has a number of the benefits that I talked about with the permeable pavers are even greater for a living roof because there's no pavement at all. It's just all permeable surface, and it's soaking up that water and sending it much more gradually down through our rainwater systems into the water table. And then there's also the benefit of providing, obviously, plant habitat. It's mostly planted with sedums and other very drought-tolerant plants, so it doesn't require much in the way of irrigation. And then also, it provides wildlife habitat. So in the springtime, we actually have Canada geese that nest up here on the roof. And it kind of helps the building blend with the natural environment, provides a little bit of insulation as well on the roof. And in the summertime, the evaporation of water from the living roof can passively cool the building. So a very cool feature, and it's just really nice to look at too, I think. So there's that section. There's another one in between the solar array and the living roof that you can't really see down below. And then there's some more on this other side of the roof that you also can't quite see from this view. But the living roof. Questions about our roof systems? Okay. I'm going to stop this screen share for right now, but I'm going to point out before we go, there's some light panels on the inside of the blue solar panels, and we're going to look at those from the inside in just a minute here, so just keep those in mind. Okay.
That's a good transition to the to underneath the roof.
Yeah, so we're back inside the building here.
And this is our
great hall. So it's kind of a event space, meeting space. In non-COVID times, have a lot of like-minded organizations that can come and use this for meetings or other events. And you'll notice the lights just turned on. But this, I think, is a really great space to talk about lighting. And so I'll start just by pointing out the panels that I mentioned earlier. So if you can point up at the roof here, you'll see the inside of these white panels. So they're just essentially a translucent skylight. But one of the main problems with skylights is energy loss, because the roof is kind of the place, through convection, heat likes to rise. And so if you don't have a well-insulated roof, you can lose a lot of energy through it. And skylights are notorious for energy loss. But this product called CalWall is a skylight panel, or can also be used as a window or a translucent wall panel that contains a nanogel. So there's I'll show you the side view of it. It's about 2 inches thick, and it's filled with nanogel. So this is a very highly insulating material that's also translucent. And it's called nanogel because it's kind of a nano-engineered material. And there's all these microscopic or nanoscopic bubbles that are put into it. And basically the way that insulation works is the more trapped air you can fit into a material, the better it is at insulating. So that's kind of why, you know, like if you think about animals, fur insulates really well because it kind of creates all of these like nestled little air pockets that the animal's able to hold around them. And so kind of replicate that in insulation. And that's why igloos work. Even though you would think snow would be cold, it still traps a lot of air because it's not a very dense material. So nanogel is similar to that. And this almost looks like an igloo panel if you think about it. And so the newest version of Cal-Wal's panels can get up to an R20 rating. And R value is the rating for insulation value in a wall system or any insulated system. And that's similar to like a 2x6 wall, which is like a standard wall in a residential building, or most buildings these days. Wood frame building is about R20. So to have a window that can perform as well as a wall that doesn't have any windows in it is pretty remarkable. So Cal-Wal's a cool product for sure. And it also
the R is for remarkable. Just kidding.
Yeah,
I also wanted to interject. I forgot to warn you, we're at 13 minutes left.
13 minutes, okay. Going a little slow here, sorry. But yeah, it's a good space to talk about lighting because we have the skylight lighting coming in. We've also got clear story windows, which are windows that are high up on the wall on both the north side of the building here and the south side. And those allow us to use less electrical lighting. So the lights in here are actually controlled by motion sensors. So when we walk into the room, there's sensors up in the corners here that detect our movement. If there's nobody in the room, they'll automatically turn off the lights. Once you come in, they turn them on, so you don't have to remember to turn them off. And then there's a secondary photo sensor, which is up on this beam here that Kelly's kind of filming right now. There's a little white box up there, and that detects how much sunlight is in the room. So if there's enough daylight in here, the lights will also automatically turn off. So they basically are never on if they don't need to be, and that way we can maximize the use of the daylight that this room is designed to have. And that can really reduce energy use because lighting is one of the biggest energy users in a lot of commercial buildings. So if you have any questions about that, I'll let you interject as we walk into the kitchen here so we can kind of keep moving. But please do ask if you have questions.
Robin sharing that Robin was able to cook in our great kitchen. We really value those experiences. I can't wait for cooking classes to come back. We would line folks up here, and so glad you were able to make it. And we have another question from Miriam. Oops, my chat just disappeared. Is one movement sensor enough to calculate or to sense our light usage?
It is, yeah. We actually have a single sensor that does all of our outdoor lighting controls. And it can be nice to have, you know, multiple sensors if there's different lighting conditions. We do have a separate one in the loading dock because that's a very shaded area. But essentially, you only need one per like area that gets the same level of lighting. So for each room, you would probably want one, or each room that has similar lighting.
Sorry, Miriam actually meant to, is one light sensor enough to detect if someone's in the room?
Oh, like the motion sensors.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So our rooms each have 2 in them, and I think those you generally want to have more than one, depending on the size of the room. If it was a really small room, you might only need one. But it really depends on how the room is used and how big it is. But like downstairs in one of our larger conference hall rooms, I think we've got 3 or 4 in one space. So you just basically want to have it so that when somebody is walking into a space, they're not going to walk into a dark area and not have the lights turn on when they need to. But yeah, with the motion sensors, you probably want to have a couple at least in larger rooms. Thanks for the question. Good one.
And we've got around 7 minutes until 12.
Okay. So here we are in our education kitchen. And I'd like to take the opportunity while we're here to just talk about the connection between regenerative agriculture or soil healthy agriculture and climate change and eating. So this is kind of like, in a sense, where the rubber hits the road, or where you're actually making use of the food, the healthy local food in this case, that you're buying. So one of the kind of simplest ways that folks can kind of vote with their fork or vote with their pocketbook is by supporting farms that are doing soil healthy practices in their local area. And like I said earlier, the more that the practices that farmers are using help to build healthy soils, so doing things like cover cropping, doing low till or minimal till agriculture where it's possible, allowing as much as possible for plants that are planted out there to absorb energy from the sun and put that energy into the soil in the form of roots and other exudates or things that come out of the roots, and that helps build up the soil, build the carbon, and actually pull carbon out of the atmosphere. And then also, of course, if you're shopping locally, there's not as much transportation required. So I think the average item on the dinner plate in the US travels about 1,500 miles. So our food is often more well-traveled than we are. So that shopping locally can also help reduce that. And so the education that happens in here is often about helping people learn how to achieve local flavors, or flavors you might not be able to get from a local product. So for example, citrus is not something that grows well in the Pacific Northwest. But there's other flavors that are similar, like apple cider vinegar, or sumac actually produces a red bud that can be used to make a lemonade type beverage, or put into other recipes to get that tart kind of citrus flavor. And then something as simple as using locally produced honey instead of sugar can really reduce the impact or the transportation and support the local economy. So a lot of focus goes into that here. And then there's a number of sustainable features as well. So this countertop that we're looking at, there's a little ladybug, look at that. Don't usually see those this time of year.
So lucky.
This countertop is made out of a product called Paperstone, which is a locally produced material. And it's made from recycled paper, as it sounds, and hazelnut resin. And you can buy it at Green Home Solutions here in Seattle. It comes in a variety of different colors. Got some old samples here. And it's temperature rated up to about 375 degrees. So you can put a pan that's pretty much right off the stove on top of it, and it's not going to burn it. It's kind of comparable to a stone countertop, but you can still cut it with a conventional circular saw, so you wouldn't necessarily have to hire a stone countertop contractor to install it. And the material itself is cost competitive with stone, but has a much lower impact in terms of extraction, mining, and for stone, and all of that is fairly impactful. This is a recycled material. So cool product. If you're interested in new countertops, check it out. And then the paneling on the front of this area here is made from bamboo, which is a rapidly renewable material. It gets used for flooring a lot. And every time the bamboo grows, it kind of sucks more carbon out of the atmosphere. You don't have to actually kill the plant to harvest it because it's a fast growing grass. couple examples there. All the appliances in the kitchen that we're able to have Energy Star certified are Energy Star certified. Energy Star is a program of the Department of Energy that certifies energy efficient appliances. If you're not aware, definitely check it out. If you're looking into buying new kitchen appliances for your home or any appliance, worth checking out their list. And you can often get rebates through your local utility for energy efficient appliances and water efficient appliances as well. I recently got a rebate at my home for installing a 1 gallon per flush toilet in Seattle. So check those out. And then our ventilation system is also automated. So it only turns on when there's actually heat up there. So when the stoves or the ovens are actively being used is the only time that turns on. That's called demand controlled ventilation. And it can save a lot of energy. In a lot of commercial kitchens, they have the vents running constantly as long as the kitchen is kind of open in operation, but they don't necessarily always need that air, and it can cut down on all the heating that you have to do, as well as to replace that air, as well as the fans that run to bring that air out of the building. So those are a few small sustainability things here in our kitchen. Looks like we have a question.
Yes, and we are getting to the end of the tour. It's 11:58, and we do have I feel like one fun takeaway might be the composting toilets. I don't know if you have time for that.
I'm sorry that they've taken us over here.
No, I think we explored really well with what everyone wanted to learn about, though. But okay. Yeah, there is a mention from Joanna in the chat that I'll connect with you in the chat.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna just do a quick screen share to look at our composting toilets, since that's to be a little bit faster here. Oops. So you can get a sense of what they look like. So this is the inside of our compost room. And this is where all the waste from the toilets comes down. And it's a fairly simple system. There's just a layer of wood shavings at the bottom. And we rake it out about once a month and put a new layer of wood shavings over the top of that. And we've had these systems installed since the building was open in 2011. They still have not had to be emptied because the worms and the bacteria that live in these composters are so efficient at breaking the material down and breaking it down that the level just keeps getting lower and lower. They're about 2/3 full at this point, I would say. One of the oddest jobs that my former boss had to do when she started here was to go out on the farm, get some red wriggler worms and dump a handful of them down each toilet. And that was to help start communities of healthy worms that would break down this material in the toilets for us. So yeah, composting toilets save a huge amount of water, like I mentioned, about 95% or 98% reduction from conventional toilets. So with that, I will end the formal tour for anyone who needs to leave. And then if anyone that wants to stay to have a little Q&A here at the end, please feel free to stay on and we can talk about whatever you'd like.
Thank you so much, Barry. And thank you everybody for joining us. I loved how it honestly was a full systems process, because you went from the kitchen to the toilet. And we closed the loop on the valuable resource that is nutrient sharing and water.